Please be advised this meeting is being broadcast over the internet. I'd like to consider the approval of the meeting minutes from the meeting September 27th.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is approved. Agenda item 3 is consider of the approval of the consent calendar. Please note that you've received some supplemental materials for the items M3 through 8, the nominations for the Field of Study Advisory Committees. These consent items are 5IJM 1 through 8, N2, and N5 through 8. If you'd like to remove any of these items or add items, now's the time. If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Fred and a second by Mr. Steen.
I'm just figuring this out. There's just 3 of us.
Yeah, so we're going to just,
So Doctor, are you ready?
yeah,
Okay.
so we're going to choreograph this and make it fun. So we have a motion and a second. Yes, sir. My script may have had an error in it, so is it shadowed? I'm sorry. Yes, it should be. M9 is also,
M9.
oh,
M or N? N. Oh, yeah, N.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I remember if the Dr. Tesher was here, he would tell us M is what and
Yeah,
M.
he has.
Oh, yeah, well, he's that military guy.
Mike is M, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yes, thank you for that correction. So do we have a motion
Motion made.
and a second to also add that item to the consent?
Yes.
9.
That's right. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. So we have asked if there is public testimony, and we do have individuals registered to testify today for item 5N4, and so we'll hear that testimony when we get to that item. Agenda item 5A is a report from the Committee on Activities of the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. This is it for information only. We have Dr. Michelle Duran, chair of this committee, and Dr. Justin Louder, co-chair, and they'll provide a brief update on activities and be available to answer questions. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for affording us the opportunity to speak with you about some of the activities that the Learning Technology Advisory Committee has been engaged in over the course of the last year, and some of the projects that we are currently working on and will be focusing on as we go through the remaining part of the year of appointment. I am Michelle Duran. I am the Assistant Vice President for Teaching and Learning at Texas A&M University, Kingsville, and I'm currently chairing the LTAC, and I'm joined by my colleague.
And I'm Justin Louder, and I'm Associate Vice Provost for E-Learning and Academic Partnerships at Texas Tech University.
As you may know, the LTAC is charged with engaging in substantive policy research and discussion regarding the role that learning technology specifically plays in Texas higher education and providing advice and recommendations to the board. We take that responsibility very seriously and definitely do focus on a multitude of different tasks at hand that are brought forth by both the people on the committee as well as members in the community of practice within distance learning and digital learning. One of the main things that we do look at is approval for doctoral level programs in the distance education field. Specifically, you have a handout that has one approval, which was done last year. I am happy to report that in addition, through the course since the fall semester, we've approved 3 additional programs: a hybrid PhD in physics with UT Arlington and UT Rio Grande Valley, a fully online DNP, which is a Doctor of Nursing practice at UT Health Science Center, as well as one at UT Arlington, to bring the total to 4 to date. In the process of looking at these programs, we also look at the campuses that they will be in, looking at their student services, looking at their academic services, and making sure that our students are going to be supported throughout their educational endeavors when they do jump into this modality of instruction. In addition, the LTAC keeps on top of prevalent issues in distance learning that warrant review or innovative ideas that could improve the practice of digital learning in the state. Over the course of the last few meetings, several projects have come forth, and we're going to briefly talk about some of those that we are going to focus on, starting with the survey of distance education.
Last year, the Learning Technologies Survey Learning Technologies Committee developed a survey to go out to all Texas institutions of higher education, talking about things like accessibility and how they're providing accessible content to distance and online learners, the LMS or the learning management system that schools used, how schools looked at student authentication and identity verification, if they were using proctoring vendors and things like that. Overall, we had a 46% response rate from institutions of higher education in Texas. We also had 7 independent schools from the ICUT group of schools participate in the 34-question survey. That question survey went out last spring, and our plan is to redo the survey this spring, coming out in either January or February. The announcement will go to chief academic officers of institutions of higher education and ask them to respond. The survey last year was administered, and then the data was presented at the Texas Distance Learning Association conference, and it garnered very positive discussion and a clear need to continue practicing the administration of this survey on a yearly basis to attain a state of distance learning for the state of Texas. Ideally, results will continue to be collected to establish longitudinal and current data repositories to influence future practice of distance learning. So the committee has updated the survey this year based on responses last year, and it will be going out. It is being finalized by the data committee here at the coordinating board and approved, and we hope to have it out the first of the year. Questions?
Is that the end of your report?
We've got a couple of other things.
Okay. All right. I do want to ask about the survey, though, real quickly. So in past experience, I have seen, even personally, a lot of extra fees and cost in doing long-distance learning as a student. I wonder, are we still seeing that across the state with most of the schools where you have an extra fee for whatever it is? So you're paying the regular tuition, and then you're paying an extra $100 because you're doing long distance. Is that in the survey, and what are you seeing across the state? I do feel like it's a barrier for some people, and, you know, if I'm paying the regular tuition, I'm actually paying for another student to sit in a classroom that I'm not using. And that was really part of, and I'm talking, this was really the beginning of online learning several years ago, but I don't know if that's still in place or not. But I do feel like there is a imbalance of the cost in some schools, not all, but some. I don't know if you have an answer to that or not.
So I can tell you, we are looking in the survey on the funding models that schools are using in terms of distance education. Do they charge a specific fee for distance learning? We've also asked last year, and we're asking again this year, if schools are looking at using OER or open education resources as part of their online programs to reduce the costs of materials that students get. I can speak from my institution. We do charge a distance ed fee, but that replaces some of the fees that students pay on campus. So they don't pay some of the on-campus fees, but they do pay an online fee to help with the infrastructure of that. So it's comparable, but it is different fees, and they're not paying some of the on-campus ones. We also ask last year, what are the biggest distance ed challenges that you are seeing, and that we can take that data and use it to inform kind of the discussions here with the LTAC. Another that we do ask is if there are any additional charges for things like proctoring or anything like that. And so we're trying to get longitudinal data to help kind of form the discussion around distance ed in the state of Texas. Because we just did it the one time last year, we don't have that yet, but we hope with this administration we'll have more.
So I applaud you for the survey. I mean, I think this is extremely valuable information, and you know, obviously, what goes into it, y'all would know the best. But so my question is, I mean, what were your anticipation? I mean, 46% return, is that good? Is that, you know, in certain surveys that's really good, but in others I go, well, it ought to be higher, because I want to make sure that we're getting a true representation of what's really happening out there. So what are y'all's thoughts or goals on that?
I think we would agree. We would like it the higher response rate. This year, luckily, the coordinating board has a distance education portal now that institutions are using to submit distance ed programs, and each institution had to name a portal representative for distance ed. We did not have that last year. The survey announcement went to chief academic officers, and at many institutions, those individuals are not the people that oversee distance ed, or ultimately oversee distance ed, but they're not the individuals managing the program. This year we have names of distance ed contacts at institutions and at systems, so we will send the survey out to both chief academic officers and these distance ed contacts, so hopefully we'll get more than a 46% response rate.
Okay, thank you. Can go on.
Okay.
Sorry.
We'll proceed. No, by all means. This is great information.
I would forget my question if I didn't.
It's great information to take back and help improve the different working instruments that we currently have. One of the other endeavors that we've taken on this year, over the course of actually a couple of years, is revising and aligning the principles of good practice for academic degree and certificate programs and credit courses offered electronically, which we call the PGP document, to align better with the current practices in the research and distance education delivery. We are looking at revising it to map a little bit more closely to things like our SACS requirement, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges Accreditation Standards, as well as the Council of Regional Accrediting Commissions, our CRAC international guidelines, now with the state authorization coming into place. Looking at international instruments for quality assurance in distance education, like the Quality Matters rubric, as well as the Online Learning Consortium scorecard, so that we can have our PGP document in a very illustrated way map out to all these other four. It also will reduce redundancy in reporting that several institutions are required to do. If we'd have it mapped out a little bit better, that would also minimize on the time and collection of data needed to fulfill the requirements for these different entities. The way that we are going to get this across, we want to get as much buy-in as we can and as much feedback from the different institutions in Texas. So we're looking to leverage the TXDLA conference, which is your distance learning conference, to have a forum specifically on this instrument, as well as leverage the higher education regional councils, which all have an institutional representative from the state, to get a couple of minutes at their regional meeting to produce a copy of the document and get some feedback from that, as well as an open forum online, so that we can get as much public vision of it before we go forth and look at adopting a new instrument. In addition, with our higher education regional councils, what we've instituted is an orientation for all of our chairs of the regional groups, so that we can remind everyone of what those requirements are and what the different types of approvals and notification procedures are. In addition, institutional representatives also have an orientation, so that we can all be on the same page when we're reporting distance education curriculum changes or notifications to our entities. We also streamline the process of creating a template, so that we have a uniformed way of reporting this information across the state, instead of everyone being at liberty to design their own reports. It's easier to look through for anyone that would like to compare data between what different programs are being offered across institutions if we all have a very similar instrument that we're reporting.
And recently, the committee has started to discuss the definitions the state of Texas uses to define what a distance ed program is, an online program, a hybrid program is, because as you know, the research and the technology changes almost daily. And so the committee felt that the definitions that are currently in place have not been looked at in about 10 years, I believe was the last time. And so we decided it was time to look at that to make sure they're still matching with current best practices in distance and online learning.
So we will continue to stay abreast of the different research and different topics that come out in digital learning. If there is ever anything that we can serve in a capacity to better advise any one of the different councils for the coordinating board, we will definitely take that on with great responsibility and be very happy to assist in any way possible. So at this time, we thank you for your support, and if there are any questions or comments for us to answer at this time.
John.
Dr. Duran and Dr. Lauder, thank you for your time. I know you volunteered to do this, so, right? At least you haven't gotten a paycheck. So one of your tasks is to review distance education doctoral program proposals and provide recommendations to the board. And Dr. Duran, I know that you were elected to the chair position just a few months ago, correct? Mm-hmm. But how long have you been on this LTAC?
Going on my 6th year.
And so in that period of time, how many of these requests do you get? And do you ever turn any of them down?
I do believe we have had, and I cannot give you an accurate number right off the top of my head, but we can definitely get that for you. We have normally, depending on the year, for example, right now we currently have 3 that we've looked at for this fiscal year. We have a subcommittee that looks at these proposals. So before they get to the LTAC for voting, they've already gone through a screening process. So to say that they would be denied at the LTAC level is not necessarily accurate. It would be at the subcommittee level where those discussions happen with the different institutions. They will look at the proposal submission, review it. If there are any discrepancies or gaps, they'll go back to the institution, get evidence of whatever is being talked about, talk about remediation if there needs to be for any of the information that was submitted to the actual committee. Once they go through that process, then will it get to the LTAC for approval.
So probably you don't turn many down once you get to the LTAC, is what you're saying, once it gets to LTAC. But do you ever have people that start that submission process and then they just don't cut it?
We do. We do have some that in committee have gone back to have those discussions, and if major things have been identified, then in that case they may not choose to follow through until they have corrected those things that have been brought to attention. And again, accurate numbers I can't get you right up the top of my head.
Just wondered if, when you turn somebody down, what are the reasons that you would?
Sometimes some of the conversations, and this isn't one that we turned down, but one of the more passionate conversations was over student services provided at off-campus locations. So if we were doing a video conference type of a hybrid program, we needed to ensure that there were services being provided to the students on the receiving end, not just at the main campus that was delivering the instruction. So that's one of the things. The other issue that is a topic of conversation is quality assurance in classes. Our faculty going through training, our courses being reviewed. How are we collecting feedback from our students on the experience itself for online education?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I was hoping you might talk a little bit more about the work that you were doing with the open educational resources and the implementation of SB 810. It sounded like a really interesting project.
We've had a couple of conversations at meetings with coordinating board staff on SB 810. There was the negotiated rulemaking committee, of course, that came out. It does not fully fall under LTAC's purview, so we aren't as involved as maybe some other groups are. We have asked to be kept in the loop and updated on what's going on and how we can assist. I sat on the negotiated rulemaking committee for the OER grant program and that. So we'll continue to get updates, and I think that's something, and Dr. Duran can jump in too. I think that's something we're all very interested in because of course the cost of textbooks and materials continue to go up. And the more things we could do with open resources or reduced cost resources, I think would be beneficial. And online programs, I think, really lend themselves to the use of OER. And I know at my campus and others, they have faculty that are integrating OER into classes. It may not be a large-scale implementation yet, but we have people looking at it and working on it to see how we can do it.
Excellent. Any others? Thank you so much. We really appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Agenda item 5B is a report to the committee on activities of the Apply Texas Advisory Committee. This is for information only. Dr. Rebecca Lothringer, co-chair of this committee, will provide a brief update. Say your name for us.
So you were very close. Dr. Rebecca Lothringer. I'm Associate Vice President for Enrollment and Admissions at the University of North Texas and currently serving as co-chair of Applied Texas Advisory Committee. You're very welcome. Thank you for your time and allowing me to be here this morning. I would like to highlight a few of the things from the report that we submitted about the work that the Applied Texas Committee has done this past year. The committee is a statutory committee comprised of 24 representatives from universities and colleges across the state. Our purpose is to consider recommendations for improvements and development of the Applied Texas application. That application is provided to the students free of charge. That the charges are the cost related are picked up by the universities and colleges using the application itself. This past year, we had 1.5 million applications that were submitted through Apply Texas. That was about 900,000 unique users who applied through Apply Texas this past year, and that was an increase of 2.1% in applications submitted this year as opposed to the previous year. The committee meets each year to discuss recommendations from other members using Apply Texas, and based on our priorities, we'll then put forth recommendations for development and improvements to from the committee to the development officers at the University of Texas. We look at those improvements to try to make sure that we are improving the application for better use and efficiency for the students. We also make sure that we stay compliant with any federal and state laws. As a part of our charge, we also provide an outreach resource called the Counselor Suite, which is provided to the high school counselors. They're able to track their students' applications and the status of those applications through that suite so that they're better able to help their students in the application process. Finally, we also conduct a training opportunity, a one-day workshop that we provide for users every summer in coordination with the Texas Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. It's the Apply Texas workshop held one day to look at new improvements that are coming through the application, legislative updates, and to provide training for our users. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions.
Amy?
So I was looking, I know your membership is set by statute, and I was looking through some of your minutes.
Yes.
And one thing I was wondering, would you find it helpful or useful to your work at all to have more structured information or some sort of representation from K through 12 or TEA? Sometimes there are ISDs that.
As a matter of fact, through legislative session this past year, we were asked and have added representatives from K through 12 to the committee meetings so that they can give us feedback. And we have in the past had speakers come in from those K through 12 and have found it very beneficial. So this is a very welcome change.
I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. Dr. Lothringer, right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, and Apply Texas is very important because obviously that's the beginning stage. So is that one session, the general session beforehand, is that sufficient? Should we have more sessions, do you feel?
The workshop has been very beneficial to our users. We have considered having some additional training opportunities, and it's one of the things the committee has looked at. At this point, we haven't been asked by our membership to offer anything additional, but we're definitely open to that.
Thank you.
John?
Doctor, I noticed that I guess the last time you tried to meet was in April?
Yes, sir.
And you failed to obtain a quorum?
Yes, we did.
And could you talk to us about that? Were there specific reasons for that, or do you think that's an ongoing problem?
Definitely, the universities and colleges are finding a lot more things that have fallen onto their plates that's made it harder for us to find meeting times. We did get permission this past year in order to allow our membership to meet by phone. Unfortunately, phone meetings sometimes mean that someone can walk into your office and pull you away, and that's what happened. We had a quorum with our phone members up until lunch, and then at lunch, some of the folks on the phone did not come back, and we lost quorum at that point. It's definitely a challenge, and it's one that I actually, as co-chair this year, sent out a message to all of the members, reminding them of the importance of the work that they are doing and the fact that they were recommended by their presidents to be on this committee, and asked them to please make sure that they provided quorums for the meetings, and that seemed to get some attention.
Good, but you haven't had another meeting since then?
We've had one meeting since then, and we did have quorum.
You did, okay.
We've met once this academic year.
All right, thank you.
And if I may, we also had a massive, it was a timing thing. We had a massive change on membership of the board. So it was probably a shorter number of members that we actually had to make that, but now we've gotten the numbers, we've gotten the appointments back on, so we haven't had any issues since that happened.
What are you seeing in terms of people that actually come versus phone in?
Still, the majority of our members are deciding to travel to meet in person, but we have seen an increase in the number that are volunteering to move to the phone. We used to only have one or two, and this past meeting we had 5 that were on the phone.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for being here and giving the report.
Thank you for your time.
Agenda item 5C1 is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from Texas Tech University for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in exercise physiology. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This particular PhD program would prepare graduates for academic and research-based careers that address health disparities, particularly with the Hispanic population. It is also somewhat unique in that it would be the only PhD program specifically geared to exercise physiology. And while we have 4 other PhD programs in Texas that have a track within another PhD program around that, this would be the only one with that particular emphasis. We do have some contingencies attached to this particular program in that they agree to hire 3 additional faculty positions prior to fall 18. And you may recall that we have changed our policy in how we deal with contingencies, particularly with faculty hires, so that they don't have to have the faculty at the time they submit the proposal, but they do need to have the faculty hired and in place by the time the program starts. And so we have set a June 1 deadline for institutions to submit their curriculum vitae and letters of intent and to sort of prove up that they've actually hired the faculty and will have them in place in the fall or whenever the program will start. In this case, would be fall 2018. In some respects, it's sort of a standard program, a 60-hour semester credit hour program beyond the master's degree. And again, it is somewhat unique in that it will focus on the disparities in the Hispanic population in healthcare.
Members, you have any questions?
So nobody is here from Texas Tech?
I believe there is. Dr. Mark Sheridan, Dr. Angela Lumpkin, and Dr. David Roach, if they want to come forward. Thank you for coming today from Lubbock.
You traveled a long way. Maybe each of you could take a few minutes and tell us what's on your mind.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
National and state data on workforce demand point to a significant need in West Texas for a PhD program in exercise physiology with an emphasis on health disparities. How else do we know this? First, our department invited 4 external experts to advise us on identifying what is now the unique focus for this proposed program, which will address workforce demand in serving others. Next, a desk reviewer affirmed the focus on health disparities was excellent and on target. Then, our pursuing a non-duplicative emphasis on health disparities was confirmed by 3 independent experts on their own site review. Texas Tech's location in rural West Texas, alongside medical centers that serve populations with increased prevalence of unhealthy conditions such as cardiovascular disease and obesity, positions us well to address inequities in the burden of disease and the risk factors for disease or disability. Our faculty works with special populations, including older adults, women, obese individuals, and diabetics, addressing health disparities either in their individual research or by implementing collaborative and community-based physical activity interventions. The importance of this program's unique emphasis on health disparities extends far beyond West Texas to the state, nation, and world, as faculty and PhD student research will help address preventable differences in the burden of disease by helping socially disadvantaged individuals optimize their health. As Dr. People said, the 60-semester credit hour program will include a 21-hour exercise physiology core, 6 one-hour exercise physiology seminars, extensive mentored experiences in research laboratories, and a publishable dissertation. A major departmental strength is our outstanding research facilities. Each faculty member in exercise physiology has a dedicated laboratory for his or her independent research. Our excellent building includes room for expansion in research laboratories and instructional space. Our faculty has conducted independent physiological research on health disparities on ongoing active research projects. Their expertise is in exercise physiology, exercise science, human performance, and nutritional sciences, which represents the diversity of expertise comprising the breadth of exercise physiology. Through strong institutional support, we are hiring 5 additional exercise physiology faculty during 2018-2019, including at least 1 at the senior rank. We've already hired 1 at the senior rank. Past undergraduate and master's degree students have already inquired about when Texas Tech will offer this degree and are excited about the prospect that one may begin in the near future. We will strive for excellence in preparing PhD graduates for careers in research and health care, with unique skills for identifying and addressing health disparities affecting our nation's citizens. Graduates will have the potential to become leaders in redirecting exercise physiology education and research to improve the health of citizens from different demographic backgrounds, especially in the large Hispanic population in Texas. Glad to answer any questions.
That was pretty thorough.
Very thorough.
All right, you had a comment.
Well, she answered the question I had. Thank you, Dr. Lumpkin.
Certainly.
Dr. Sheridan Roach, would you like to add anything? Just a few minutes?
Thank you. Sorry, I picked up a cold, so I'll keep my remarks very short. I'm the dean of our graduate school and the vice provost of graduate and postdoctoral affairs at the university. And what is especially important about this program is not only will it provide the skilled professionals that are equipped to address health disparities, but as Dr. Lumpkin said, the research activity will be so important in terms of the kind of knowledge that's necessary to diagnose and treat some of the disorders that are occurring among the Hispanic and other underserved populations. And so we are really excited about developing this program and collaborating the faculty that will be in this program with other areas on our campus in nutrition, biochemistry, and our health sciences center. So we can actually develop a large critical mass of faculty that may have similar research interests that will really be able to launch this and make it a signature program for the state of Texas.
We thank you all for your time today. What's really exciting about this program is that, it has the research component on it, but, I was eating lunch with a physician the other day, and he said, there's about 18 preventable diseases that are based on diet and exercise, and we really see this program as an exciting outreach into the community to be able to help people to address preventable diseases and to be able to deal with some things that will improve the quality of life. So we're very excited about this program. Angela has worked very hard on it, and the dean supports it, and the graduate school supports it, and so we're very proud to be able to share this with you today.
I'll make the motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Agenda item 5C2 is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from the University of Houston Clear Lake for a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in mechanical engineering. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. The proposal in front of you is for a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Houston Clear Lake. This is one of those proposals where the workforce demand, if you look at TWC and Bureau of Labor Statistics data, it appears that we may be generating enough graduates to meet the demand for mechanical engineering. But as I've noted in previous presentations, we've also begun to look at other real-time data where it's available. And we have a sort of experimental partnership right now with EMSI, which is the Economic Modeling Specialist International, a company that looks at want ads and does some analysis of job openings and job demand through the study of those. And their reports indicate that there are still a need for mechanical engineers. In Texas, unemployment data suggests that the unemployment rate among mechanical engineers in Texas is well below what any economist would consider to be full employment, all of which indicates that there is still a need for mechanical engineering. And as is noted in other presentations, mechanical engineering is also one of those fields where it prepares you to go into and to do other things in engineering other than just mechanical engineering. And in a conversation the other day, it was pointed out that engineers often spend a few years actually doing engineers and then become project managers and so forth. When I was in Midland College, we worked very closely with an architectural firm, and the gentleman there who was always in charge of the project management and that kind of thing was a mechanical engineer by training, but hadn't actually done any mechanical engineering in quite some time. So there's oftentimes an ongoing market demand for these kind of positions. We also have some contingencies attached to this that also have to do with hiring under the same kind of circumstances. They should have these, if for a fall start of 2018, they need to have those proved up to us by June 1 of 2018. And as usual with engineering programs, we're also going to require that they seek ABET accreditation upon achieving their first graduate, which is one of the requirements of ABET. It's a typical 127 credit hour program in mechanical engineering, which will be almost exclusively face-to-face. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any, and there are representatives of the institution here.
I believe we have Dr. Glenn Houston, Dr. Catherine Matthew, and Dr. Jeff Mountain, professor from the University of Houston Clear Lake. And I have a question. So, thank you for being here today. Appreciate you coming. Do you have the same problem with engineering that we do in nursing, where really you struggle to get faculty because they can get paid so well in the private industry that that faculty is an issue? You want to turn your microphone on, just hit the little red button, pull it closer.
Okay, how's that?
That's better, thanks.
First of all, let me tell you, my name's Glenn Houston. I'm the interim senior vice president for academic affairs and provost at the University of Houston Clear Lake. We don't seem to have that problem.
Good.
We have a search going on right now for the first 2 faculty members to start this fall. And for that first position, we already have 81 applicants. So
wow.
That doesn't seem to be an issue for us at this time. And it's a pretty diverse pool, which we're very excited about.
Or they just all want to come live in Texas. Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Would you like to? Oh, okay.
My question is, you have one other engineering program in place, a BS program?
Yes, in computer engineering at the undergraduate level.
You had that program in place?
Oh my gosh. Do you know off the top of your head? We've had it for several years. We started out many years ago. We had a computer system design program at the undergraduate level. We converted that to computer engineering. And I'm sure we've had it at least 10 years, but I'd have to verify that.
I asked that question for a specific reason. What are your graduation rates for that program? Completion rates?
I don't have that off.
Catch me lying because I've been on.
Turn your microphone on.
I just need it closer. Jeff Mountain. I'm actually the first ME faculty member, and I just started in September, so I'm not exactly sure what the completion rates are for the computer engineering. Overall, I know that we've been back through the data to try and extend our model to look at 6-year completion rates. We also looked at what I feel was a fairly realistic attrition rate, typically in the first 2 years. But as appears in several other programs, there is a substantial increase in students coming in as junior transfers from the community colleges and junior colleges. In the short time that I've been there, have attended one of the recruiting efforts at the San Jacinto South campus and had 10 or 12 people interested specifically in the mechanical engineering program as to whether or not it would be available this coming fall. So can see that we were do fairly well that way.
Let me point out, put on the table, I don't remember the amount of time, but it's only been a few years that University of Houston Clear Lake has had the lower division.
That's correct. We just
I don't
started
think
in.
everyone's aware of that. That's been a recent addition.
Yes. We were established as an upper-level institution in 1974. We went to become a four-year institution in fall of 14. So we've only been a four-year institution since then. The other thing I would like to point out is that the University of Houston is the one that approached us about offering pre-engineering because they were interested in getting more students in their engineering program. So we started a pre-engineering program in fall of 16. This past fall, we had 58 students in there. We have 5 different tracks in the pre-engineering program, and the majority of those, 60%, are in the mechanical engineering track. So we have about 33, 35 students that are looking forward to moving into mechanical engineering. The other reason we went to mechanical engineering is that the University of Houston told us that they didn't have the capacity at the time, that particular year, that we talked to them. They said we had 70 students that were qualified that we could not accept into our program. So we recommend that if you're going to do a BS in engineering, go with mechanical. There's a big demand out there, and we can't meet it.
The reason I raised the question about completion rates is I can tell you that as commissioner, I worry about the fact that we're proliferating all these engineering programs. We frankly don't need more engineering programs. We need the ones that we have to be more productive. When we have engineering programs that have a 6-year graduation rate of 35–40%, I don't think the solution to the spot shortages of engineers is increasing the number of engineering programs we have. Rather, it's making ones we have more productive and improving the completion rate. I hope you will pay close attention to that data point.
Glenn asked if I'm going to excuse me for my voice. It asked me about the completion rate. I really don't do numbers, so I really can't speak to that, but I can speak to our support for students. Recently, we're in year 2 of a $3 million grant from the Department of Ed that's for low-income and Hispanic students in STEM fields. And we have a project director who is a male Hispanic. I was in D.C. recently about the grant, and one of the things they were talking about was how do we get low-income Hispanic students involved in STEM. And Benito, they call him the STEM guy, and he's actually got a master's in theater from Texas Tech. And he has gotten us, we don't have a problem with getting Hispanic males in our, that we can serve. We provide them with peer mentors. We provided them with research assistants jobs. The grant would not allow us to pay tuition, but they get approximately $1,000 a month as undergraduate research assistants. The College of Science and Engineering, which will be housing this engineering program, the other co-PI is in that college in computer science. We're working with him. They've got another grant that was funded through NSF that was bringing in these students. The CSE faculty have gotten on board with undergraduate research assistants. At first, they were very reluctant. We just got word that one of them is going to a conference next spring with their undergraduate research assistant to present on the research. So we're very excited about that. We are also provide internships, paid internships. So we're working right now with the students to get them internships in the STEM fields. Another component of that that'll be coming to the coordinating board is a new undergraduate degree program with teacher certification in computer science. And so we are right now providing support also for what you would call student teachers at the University of Houston Clear Lake. We call them intern 2. Those students who have to stop working to be able to do this full-time student teaching. If they're in a STEM field, we're able to provide them with $1,000 a month additional. So we're working very hard to make sure if we get them in the door, we're going to keep them and we're going to graduate them. We're very much aware of that and making the students aware of the importance of staying. We have a very strong peer mentorship program that works with them. Personally, I've taken on, we have a student success center that tracks all the visits to the students. And at the end of the semester, I get a report of who went to the Student Success Center, and I send them all emails thanking them for recognizing they need support and asking them to share the importance of getting help when you need it with other students. As a first-generation college student myself, it's very important and dear to my heart to get these students in, keep them there, because I know we can make a difference in future generations.
Thank you. Any questions? We have a motion and a second with the contingencies, yes, that you've put in place. You had a discussion, Annie?
I just wanted to ask a quick question regarding the workforce projections, the EMSI that you said that you're using. So that's the snapshot of what it looks like right now. Is that correct? It's not projections into the future?
No, it is not projections in what BLS and TWC do. And of course, BLS gets most of its data from TWC. So what they do is projections.
Okay.
And they usually have a 10-year cohort on projections that are, if I understand it correctly, are usually based on the previous 2 years of activity in that 10-year. And of course, the further out you go, the less reliable the projections become. So what EMSI does for us is can provide real-time data in terms of how many ads are out there, and then they sort of scrub the data, if you will, to try to isolate unique ads, because sometimes you have the same ad will appear over and over again, and what they do is they try to look at unique ads so that they're matching up an ad to a job rather than having 10 ads for the same job. So they do a lot of scrubbing of that data, and so we've begun to look at them and use them to try to get some sense of what the current marketplace is at, in addition to the data that we get from TWC and BLS.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item 5C3 is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley for a Master of Science degree with a major in civil engineering. I believe, Dr. Peoples, you want to discuss, and we do have some guests.
Yes, I'll go ahead and present the item, and then we do have representatives from UTRGV.
Dr. Dave Jackson and Dr. Cynthia Brown, if you want to come to the front. Go ahead, Dr. Peoples.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So this program would, in civil engineering, would offer a local opportunity for students there. This is one of those instances where the closest institution to UTRGV offering such a program is Texas A&M Kingsville, which is over 100 miles away. And of course, in terms of labor market demand, the Workforce Commission anticipates that there'll be a 24% increase in employment opportunities for civil engineers, and that the 10-year time period that we're using, that they have right now, is 2014 to 2024. But our EMSI analysis also suggests that there is a need for civil engineers in Texas as well, through their look at the unique job postings. Okay. And so this one also has some contingencies attached to it to hire 3 full-time faculty. This program has a start date of fall 2019, so then they would be required to prove up their hires by June 1 of 2019, so that they have plenty of time to look at that. It's a 30 semester credit hour program for those students who choose a thesis option, and a 36-hour program for those students who choose a non-thesis option. Now, I'd be glad to answer any questions. We have representatives
Dr. Brown,
here.
Dr. Jackson, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. I'm Cynthia Brown. I'm the Deputy Provost at UTRGV, and I'm very pleased to be here today. I would like to say one thing to Dr. Peoples. Our request is to begin the program in fall of 2018, not 2019. We have believe that right now our College of Engineering and Computer Science has over 2,900 undergraduate students and over 200 graduate students. All of our undergraduate programs are ABET accredited, so there's a strong interest in engineering careers in the Rio Grande Valley. So we're very pleased to add an additional master's degree in civil engineering to our array of current degrees in civil engineering. There's strong growth in our civil engineering undergraduate program currently. 30% of our students are female, 90% of our students are Hispanic, so we believe we'll be adding to the diversity of the workforce with this new master's degree.
What are the graduation rates for graduate engineering?
I'm sorry, I don't have the rates with me, but I believe they're very good. We have been, and I will get that information to you, Dr. Paredes. We have been attracting significant amount of external funding through our civil engineering department, in particular our stormwater research we've been doing and our collaborations with all the local governmental entities. We're in the process of putting together memorandums of understandings where we'll be placing our students as interns with these governmental entities such as Cameron County, Hidalgo County, and some of the various cities to work on their stormwater issues. So this will be a good avenue for our graduate students once we begin the program to have actual experience, in the field while they're in school. We also have a new building under construction at UTRGV that will be completed by the fall of 19. It will include new teaching labs for engineering, so that will expand our capacity for teaching labs in engineering and maintain our strong lab space we have for research in engineering. As you know, the Rio Grande Valley is growing, so the demand for infrastructure growth goes along with it, and therefore the need for civil engineers in the region. Also, we currently have 14 full-time faculty in civil engineering, as well as 2 part-time faculty in civil engineering. Our plan is to add 2 full-time equivalent faculty next year at the lecturer level to backfill the teaching that our full-time tenure and tenure-track faculty would do in the new program. The first year of the program, we would offer 8 courses, and our current faculty, we believe, can handle the offering of those 8 courses. The second year, we would grow to have 15 courses, and at that point, we'll be adding 3 additional full-time faculty to the staff to begin in fall of 2019. But again, we believe with our current faculty we have in place, we have sufficient capacity to offer the program beginning fall of 2018. I'd be happy to answer questions. This is Dr. Dave Jackson, our Dean of the Graduate School, who can maybe talk a little bit about our current master's programs and their growth and strengths.
Yes, thank you for having me too. We currently have master's programs in mechanical, electrical engineering, and those programs are currently doing pretty well. And we think that's going to help our civil engineering program if approved, because one of the things that we have noticed as we look back at our undergrad students is that well over 20 to 30% of those students are currently engaged in various research projects with our professors. With a lot of these students, and in fact some of the others that are not in specific research projects. A number of these students have expressed interest in going on to graduate degrees, going on to master's degrees, but as was pointed out earlier by Dr. Peoples, it's just not available in the Rio Grande Valley. The geographics and makes it difficult for many of our students, so they have to leave the Rio Grande Valley in order to pursue a civil engineering. So we think that given our track record with our other master's programs in engineering, the resources that we have, we're pretty confident that we will be able to offer this program in a very strong program that will graduate students that will be able to be well employed and to fill the needs in the Rio Grande Valley and beyond.
We have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, welcome, Dr. Brown and Dr. Jackson. I'm going to follow up on Dr. Paredes' question, what I think is very pertinent, and maybe Dr. Jackson knows this. What is the graduation rate that you're seeing coming, since you're the dean of the graduate program at UTRGV, that from undergraduate engineering students at UTRGV that are transferring and going into grad programs?
The problem is that most of our graduating students from the undergrad are not able to move into graduate programs. They have expressed a strong desire to do so, but we don't have the capacity for them because we only have the electrical and mechanical engineering, so there's no civil engineering. And those two programs are only able to absorb a relatively small number of our students that are graduating. So this is the constraint that we have with a number of our graduate programs, not just in engineering. I know we're focusing on that, but that's the problem we're having at UT Rio Grande Valley, where we are transitioning to beef up our graduate programs to accommodate a large number of students. So for example, right now, our total undergraduate is about 24,000 students. Our graduate programs in total only accommodate 3,000 students, with several of these programs at capacity. There are some with capacity, but we do not have the wide array of programs available for many of our students in the Rio Grande Valley.
Okay, then the question becomes to me is, you've got the faculty in place and you've got two different campuses in Brownsville and in Edinburgh. So how's this program going to work in terms of the curriculum that you talked about?
The program will be offered initially on the Edinburgh campus because that is where our labs are, and that is where our civil engineering faculty are located. Our Brownsville campus is where we offer our mechanical engineering at this time and our engineering technology degrees. But initially, the civil engineering will be on the Edinburgh campus.
And I should add, too, that the students in Brownsville are not precluded from doing a program in Edinburgh. We have a very robust system, a transportation system between the campuses that is entirely free for the students to use. So we do have a number of students on the Brownsville campus who take courses in Edinburgh on a daily basis.
No, I'm familiar with that, and I think that's a very good process that you have. But I was just kind of wondering what your plans are in the future. If this program and other graduate programs increase, if the coordinating board decides to do that, how is that going to coordinate with the two different locations, I guess is my question.
All of our programs are one program, just offered in two locations. As demand grows, we would certainly hope to expand this to the Brownsville campus also. We would need to have the facilities to do so. But our program, whether it offered in Edinburgh or in Brownsville, it's the same program, same curriculum, and many times the same faculty. The faculty do travel between the campuses as needed to offer the curriculum to the students, because our hope is that faculty will travel and students won't need to travel as much, and we're trying to have it that way. But as soon as we see demand, strong demand from the lower Rio Grande Valley area, and that's not only Brownsville, that's probably Harlingen South,
right.
We would certainly entertain and be looking at expanding this program there also.
Okay, great. Obviously, you all know I'm from the Valley, right? From McAllen. So I understand that, but I want the board to kind of have an idea, because it's a growing region, as you mentioned, but also it's a very unique higher education challenge and opportunity because of the way that it's UTRGV is set up now. But that's good that you're thinking about the future of that, and as this board gets programs of that, I mean, we need to realize that those opportunities are available for the students to be able to take the courses, obviously, and be able to get to either Brownsville or Edinburgh and to be able to provide that for the students. So you're already planning on that and doing that, so I thank you about that. Thank you so much.
Just a couple of things. We're straight on the 2019 versus 2018.
Are we okay on that one?
Yes, that my bad.
Okay.
The program is slated to start in fall of 2018.
Yes.
The contingencies that we have for hiring are on fall of 2019 because we felt that there was adequate faculty already in place to start the program.
And this may be an issue that's bigger than this particular issue that we're dealing with now, but following up on the Commissioner's comments on graduation rates, I believe respectfully that people coming before us should know what their graduation rates are. And perhaps it needs to be part of what we're presented in terms of
when you're finished, and if it's okay.
It needs to be part of the materials that we're presented so we can, would it be appropriate to take it into account in making these type of decisions?
Dave.
I just wanted to point out we do not calculate six-year graduation rates by major. It's somewhat problematic because people do change their degrees. We have, staff has pointed out to me once in the past week, looked at students who had achieved junior status and had that declared major and calculated a completion rate. So that isn't something we've historically done. We could do it if you wanted.
But if you made it a requirement for people to do it themselves, you're saying you don't do it.
Well, we don't do it. I don't believe institutions do it. I think part of what the Commissioner is addressing is we know we have a lot of students start as engineering students and shift to other majors. I think that's partially what he's getting at. But we can work on that. I just wanted to make clear that it's not something we have available handily, and typically they haven't been asked for that before, but we can follow up on that.
I just think it's essential when institutions talk about the success of their programs that they know what their completion rates are. And it's striking to me that so many institutions don't tabulate that information.
And I have another comment. Dr. Jackson brought up a good point. If we have all these needs and you're already at full capacity at the the mechanical engineering and the others, what is happening, or what is the university doing to try to expand that? I mean, obviously they're popular majors in the graduate degree program.
Well, that's where the construction comes in. We're building a new engineering building with new labs, additional space, so it will have additional classrooms, it will have additional
I guess
space
it's
for
really
faculty.
a question for your Board of Regents and more than anything else in terms of facilities and your plans, correct?
Yes, we have gotten tremendous resources recently, and we are looking for more resources.
Right, okay.
And I have another question. So someone gets their undergraduate degree in civil engineering. What kind of student is motivated then? Well, what's the motivation to get your master's degree?
I think it's a workforce situation where you have people with master's degrees are becoming increasingly in demand, and they command a higher salary. And as we have more need for higher level engineering planning in the Rio Grande Valley, I think we'll have strong demand for master's degrees in civil engineering.
So it takes how long to get the master's degree?
2 years.
2 years. So would the typical student go right into that?
Well, that would be an ideal situation, but I think oftentimes we find our students prefer to work before they come back to their master's degree, and perhaps in particular in engineering that could be advantageous because the experience they learn is applying their undergraduate work before they come back to their graduate degree could enhance that degree.
So then I guess they make the calculation, you remove yourself from the workforce for 2 years, but going back, you kind of make that up salary-wise?
Correct, and that's the reason we try to have as many internships as possible for our students while they are in graduate school, internships, research assistantships, graduate assistantships, to provide, some level of support. Certainly doesn't make up what they're losing in the workforce, but with the idea that when they return to the workforce, their earning capacity will be far greater.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
So, Commissioner, I'd like to ask you, do you think it would place the emphasis where we wanted to be placed to not approve this today, pending them bringing that information to us?
No, I think I think it's unfair. I think the questions took them by surprise, and I think we should go ahead with the recommendation. But I think we should let folks know now that we're going to start asking for these data in the future.
All right.
There's a motion on the floor.
All right, then I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate it.
Madam Chairman, while we're changing, so maybe I could ask our chairman, Bobby Jenkins, maybe we should look into this. We want to emphasize it.
Yeah, I completely agree, John, and looking over at Rex, trying to figure out how we can make that part of the criteria, part of the information, so that we're making a statement as to where the priorities are. David, if we're not doing it, but it seems like the institutions would have that information, and once again, it just, to me, puts the right emphasis on what we're trying to accomplish.
Rex and I were just whispering. What we could do is actually we need to modify our rules to request this, and we could, in working with Julie and her staff, provide a common definition that people would use.
Yeah.
And I think it does make sense to work from when you achieve junior status and you've got that declared major completion rate for that, because many majors wouldn't look well because so many students, we know students change majors a number of times those first years, but we can work with them on that and make that change.
Thank you.
I think it just says the right priority for us.
Thank you. Agenda item 5D is consideration of adopting the Architecture and Construction Program of Study Advisory Committee recommendation relating to courses required. Wait, that's not correct.
You got UT San
Hang on, I turned the page. So sorry. Rex, sorry.
Yeah, if I may, could I make two comments prior to presenting this particular proposal? One is,
we won't ask for their graduation rates, completion rates.
Thank you.
We've laid that aside.
Well, one is just to remind the board that we are prohibited by statute from using undergrad rates in doctoral programs as criteria. So there's a statute that says we cannot do that for doctoral programs. Now, that's certainly for master's and degrees and bachelor's degrees, we can do that.
Keep us in line.
And the other is, while we don't have, while we haven't used the kind of particular completion rates that we've discussed here and that we'll develop, part of our analysis of programs as staff is to look at completion rates of the institutions, to try to look at completion rates of areas. And so we do use those to some degree to try to look at the overall strength of the institution and trying to gauge their capacity to offer other programs and that kind of thing, not at the detailed level that we're talking about going to in the future, but at least in some general sense, we do look at those things and consider that as a part of the overall approval process.
Right, thank you.
So.
Now, agenda item 5C4 is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from the University of Texas at San Antonio for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in civil engineering. Dr. Peebles, and we do have some guests if you want to come forward, at Dr. Debrena Agbeniga and Dr. Joanne Browning. Thank you. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. So this program is a doctoral program in civil engineering. In it, we have demonstrated there is a workforce need for civil engineers in the state of Texas, and both at the bachelor's and master's level and at the doctoral level as well. San Antonio is kind of uniquely positioned because of both the Southwest Research Institute being there, and at Lackland Air Force Base, the U.S. Air Force's Civil Engineering Center is also housed there. So there's some unique opportunities to not only work with them, but also to perhaps draw some students from them as well who already have their bachelor's and master's degrees and want to pursue a doctoral program. We do have some contingencies with this, and one is rather unique, and I'll talk about it in just a minute, but we do have some contingencies attached to the 4 specific areas of civil engineering that they want to focus on: structural, geotechnical, transportation, and water resources engineering. So we were initially a little bit concerned about whether they would have sufficient faculty in each one of those areas, and so we talked to the institution about this and worked all this out, and so they've agreed to hire the necessary faculty for that. And again, this is for a start date of fall 2018, and in this case, the hires would be for fall 2018 as well. But as you know, we have become, and particularly the commissioner, have become very interested in what do we do about students who may come to a program with prior knowledge and work experience that leads to prior knowledge in the program itself. And so one of the things that we worked out with UTSA on this is this notion of, as a part of their 5 annual reports, they will also report to us any student that came to them with some substantial work experience and how they worked with that student to then translate that into course credit for them. And I would suspect that if they're successful in drawing students from either one of the Southwest Institute or the Air Force's Civil Engineering Center, they may have students there who may have had significant work experience, at least in particular areas. So that's one of the contingencies we've attached to the program, and I think it'll give us a rather, over time at least, it'll give us a lot of insight into how this works, particularly at the doctoral program level, and how efficient it can be for students. So we ought to be able to get a lot of information out of this, and so I'm appreciative of the institution agreeing to do this for us. And otherwise, it's a sort of standard 60-hour semester credit beyond rather the master's degree, but there is a provision that they've made for exceptional students who, with a bachelor's degree, who may enter the program and be required to take 75 hours beyond, and that may also be a place where the Air Force or the Southwest Institute may have some exceptional students with actually an extensive background in work, but they don't have the extensive background in academia as yet. And so I'll be glad to answer any further questions, and I'm sure they would be glad to answer questions as well.
Yes, go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll ask them. It brightens
There you
up.
go. Hello, I'm Joanne Browning. I'm the Dean of Engineering at UTSA, and we're very grateful for having time on your agenda today. This program is going to be very impactful for us. As one of the 4 big programs, civil engineering, of course, is very important to large cities. San Antonio being the 7th largest city in the country and looking to grow another 1 million people, there's a lot of needs for infrastructure resilience. And the way we look at our water resources, water treatment, transportation issues, structural integrity, all of these issues are really very near and dear to San Antonio and where we're going with this. We do have a PhD program in environmental engineering and science right now. We have actually 4 PhD programs, I should say, and we do look at, in part of our evaluation yearly, the time to degree and making sure that our students are getting out. And this should be less than 5, and ours is just a little bit over 4, so we're looking good there. But as for the civil and environmental engineering department, the PhD program we currently have is in environmental engineering and science, and we allow some of our students to pick a track within that to graduate with a PhD that would reflect their desire to have expertise in structural or geotech or transportation or so on. So this degree actually will fulfill a great need of our students, the demand we already have from students that want to have a PhD in a civil engineering topic that will reflect their desire to work in that field as well. Talking about the competency-based credits, This is unique to us, but we've developed a system where we can, with the recommendation of the committee, look at a portfolio of work as someone who has come in and give a qualifying exam to give them credit for that course. And so I think this is a good way for us to consider the backgrounds of these students that certainly come from Southwest Research Institute or the Air Force or other practices. Of course, we have many civil engineering practices in San Antonio. Debrina, would you like to say a few words?
Excuse me. Yes, I'm Debrina Agbeniga. I'm the Vice Provost and Dean of the Graduate School. And it's, as Dean Brown has said, this is a wonderful opportunity and program for us. The students that we have in the environmental program are definitely very interested in civil. There are opportunities out there for them, and the faculty have actually made a number of concessions to make sure that they have the expertise and skill sets that they need currently with the structure that we have, but definitely by having the civil program, this would make sure that we are graduating the students with the level of expertise that they truly deserve to have and we have available to them at UTSA. With respect to the contingency, it is something fairly unique to us as far as the doctoral level, but at least we've kind of modeled it in some way in what we have done with some of our master's programs where students will come in with some level of experience and we look at some of that coursework and how we can actually remove that. And so I really don't see that would being a problem with us looking at this for our doctoral students in this opportunity. With our professional development center that we have, that we just opened a year ago in the graduate school, a number of our engineering students are actually over there and doing cross-disciplinary work as well. So these students are also getting connected to the field while they're actually in their program and getting that research experience with the faculty. And we are connected, our center is connected with Southwest Research Institute and all the other places where we would see our students going. So we definitely see that this would be a way for us to be able to track this and demonstrate that there is a way for us to do this with doctoral students as well. The graduation rate, as she noted, has been outstanding for these students, and we've worked hard across the graduate school and the college to provide some additional funding, new funding streams that we now have available to make sure that our students are getting done within 4 to 5 years at the doctoral level. So we've done a lot of restructuring with a number of our programs, but definitely engineering is leading as a model at the institution as to how this can be done with some of the new funding models and partnering with the graduate school as well.
I just wanted to add 2 more things regarding the other contingency for hiring someone by June 1st. We had this discussion just a few weeks ago, and so we opened a new position, and within a couple of weeks we already had 54 applications. That was as of this past Monday, and so we're getting a number of highly qualified applicants already, so that looks really good. And just about the quality of our faculty already in the College of Engineering, across all of our disciplines, civil engineering actually led this past 9 months funding. We had $5 million of funding come into civil engineering alone. So we already have very successful faculty there, and I know that they're going to be great mentors for the next generation of civil engineering experts.
Thank you.
One thing that Dean Brown did not add is that we also have the structure of our high bay that's becoming available, and that's a facility that's very state-of-the-art and is actually going to be one of the best in the state of Texas with the capacity that we will have there. So we're also building out with another building for engineering, but that's going to be a great space for our students to actually be trained as well.
So if you have an Air Force candidate and then the Air Force moves them, how would they complete their program? You have that flexibility to deal with that?
Absolutely. We can certainly look in the other direction. So when we have students that want to come to UTSA and finish a PhD program, we had someone come from Texas A&M just this past year in civil engineering, had an NSF fellowship and wanted to finish at UTSA because they wanted to work in San Antonio as well. And so we were able to look at the credits they already have there and provide the credit back in our degree program as well.
But what if I move from San Antonio to Nebraska? Can I finish online, or would you be flexible in, making sure that I graduated?
Absolutely. We've done that as well in terms of someone taking a job before they graduate, something like that. So same thing with an Air Force person moving. Generally, the coursework is done within the first year and a half or so. We get that done very quickly.
And it's a practicum kind of
Yes, and then it's really finishing the research and staying in contact with the advisor to make sure that the thesis is wrapped up.
Great.
And we accommodate that in the graduate school. We have documentation for them to be able to do that and to make sure that those faculty members stay engaged and that we track that student as well. So we've had that in the past, but no problem with them graduating.
Other questions? I know Fred has.
For Dr. Peebles, my 50-mile question, 50-mile rule question, but does it apply to the doctorate programs?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and obviously we didn't get any comments? Right. We did not, correct?
We did not, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we got no objections.
Okay, thanks.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for being here
Madam
today.
Chairman, before we leave this, could I ask Dr. Peoples, so help me on this completion rate or measures. We had 4 agenda items, and some of them have the information and some of them don't. Am I looking at that correctly? So like on number 1, we had, there were completion measures that were submitted. And number 2, no. And number 3, no, but am I looking at this right? And number 4, yes?
And those measures that you're...
So 2 out of the 4 had completion measures. So explain all that to me.
Well, the completion measures that we have are as you'll see, they're for the institution and the state. So those are aggregate for the institution, which we do have some graduate rates, rather. And then we have for both masters, a 5-year, and a doctoral 10-year graduation rate. So we do have those for the institutions, and we have those for the state level, and that's what you see reflected there. But what's being discussed is actually more at the program level or the major level. So it's a level of granularity that we have not gotten to yet.
So what you've been discussing was at the undergraduate level. These are graduate level rates. And as was pointed out earlier, we're not permitted by law to consider undergraduate graduation and persistence rates in consideration of doctoral programs. But these are specifically rates that we do for graduate level programs to give you some comparison for what the school's doing and what's being done at the state overall. So it's sort of more or less like to like.
Do you think that the first-time licensure examination pass rates for engineering would be a fair proxy for quality of instruction? I know some of these are PhD programs. I know that's probably relatively removed, but...
I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah,
that might be worth looking into, but...
List that here.
Because we have it. Yeah.
Yes.
But...
that's difficult to address, I think.
Very difficult.
I think it would be more likely to be a proxy for level of attention to the student's progress and rather than the quality of instruction itself. They're related, but I think it has to do with how involved are they with their graduate students or their advisors paying attention to their progress.
So I guess a follow-up question, do you think it might be a good proxy for completion rates and student success from that end?
I'm sorry, I may not have understood your original question. If it's related to licensure rates. Were you talking about licensure rates earlier? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I think actually that would have some definitely relation to quality of instruction. I thought you were referring to the 5- and 10-year rates. I apologize.
And that may be contingent too upon when the licensure was sought. If it's sought within a short time period, say within a year, for example, after the completion of a program, then I think you might be able to make some decent arguments about the quality of the program being attached to that. But as the licensure in engineering, I'm not. You know, they can. I don't know how to. I don't know when they do this, because you can go to work as an engineer without being licensed as a PE, and so. Which
Whereas
you can't do in
a
some.
lawyer and a nurse and a doctor
Which you
cannot.
can't do in some
yes.
professions.
Right.
So if you seek licensure 10 years after you got your degree, then it may not be connected to the quality. So I think it might be bear looking at, but I think it'd be something that would be very difficult to sort of parse out. So.
And there are many fields that don't have actually licensing associated with them. So. And most engineers, if they're going, you know, my understanding is most engineers, if they're going to be licensed, it's really more related to their baccalaureate degree, but they become professional engineers. And as I understand it, many engineers never become PEs, but they still use their degree.
Due to the time, we're going to take the next agenda item, then we'll take a lunch break so that our guests who are here can be released. Agenda item 5D is consideration of adopting the Architecture and Construction Program of Study Advisory Committee's recommendation relating to the courses required to the Construction Management Program of Study. I believe we have Dr. James Hallmark and Dr. Jim Nelson. And Dr. Peebles, you want to?
Doctors Hallmark and Nelson are actually for the last item on the agenda. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We misled you.
Apologies.
Although if either one of them want to come up and speak to this agenda item.
Well, you want a break then? We can take lunch now? My misunderstanding. Okay. Can you do it in 3 minutes? Is this your report then?
This is strictly mine.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Go
So
ahead. We'll do
knock
this one
out
and then
pretty
we'll
quickly.
take lunch.
So just a quick reminder about a program of study. It's designed to actually create a statewide articulation agreement for an AAS degree. So in the CTE programs, we've divided those up into aligned them with the 16 career clusters identified at the national and state level. So we've created 16 program of study committees. This one is around architecture and construction. Those committees have further subdivided themselves into subcommittees that actually deal with specific programs. And in this case, it's construction management. And what you see on the second page of your blue pages there is the 37-hour program of study that has been recommended for construction management. These committees are made up of 1/2 faculty and/or administrators attached to those programs. 1/4 come from secondary schools, and 1/4 come from business and industry.
Any questions? We'll need a motion.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, motion carries. So thank you very much, and we will return in 30 minutes. is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the July 17 annual compliance reports for the institutions under a certificate of authorizations, names beginning with P through Z. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. So you may recall that for those schools who operate under what we usually refer to as Chapter 7, which are for-profit institutions in Texas, some private institutions that are nonprofit, but also out-of-state institutions who wish to operate in Texas and offer programs or clinicals or otherwise have activity in the state of Texas, then they need a certificate of authorization from us to do so. And we've divided them up into the A through O and P through Z. I'm sorry, I had to run through the alphabet in my head there for a second. Into two groups to try to balance the workload a little bit. And what you have in front of you is the report from institutions P through Z.
Any questions? We'll need a motion to accept this. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 5F is a report to the Committee on School Closures and/or Teach-Outs pursuant to Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Section 7.75. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. So this time around, we have two institutions that have closed several campuses in Texas. One is University of Phoenix. They have been closing campuses across the country for quite some time now as they sort of close up their face-to-face operations and focus more on their online operations. But they have closed several of their locations, but they still have 4 that will be open and operating in Texas, at least for the foreseeable future. And of course, they're still a viable entity, so they have a headquarters where students can get transcripts from, and they have provided and done everything they're supposed to do with regard to teach-outs of the students at the physical locations that they have closed. So they've done a good job in that regard. And Alterius Career College has also gone through much of the same kind of consolidation, and they will actually only have 1 location left in Texas, in Houston. And you can see on the second page of your blue pages that there are 5 current locations that will be closing as soon as they have completed their teach-outs. But they still remain as a corporation, so their transcripts are taken care of. And they have also acted accordingly with their teach-outs the way they should. So.
That was for information only. Any questions?
Just a quick one. So I was looking at the materials, and it says the teach-out plan is subject to board approval, but then what we did was then give to you?
Yes, sir.
But we delegated to you the authority?
Yes.
To oversee the approval process?
Yes, sir.
So that's why it's just a report today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So moved.
Agenda item 5G is, that's all right. Agenda item 5G is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to issuance of a request for applications for the Open Educational Resources Grant Program. Dr. Peebles.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. In the most recent legislative session, there was monies appropriated to the coordinating board with regard to open educational resources for 2 purposes. One is to do a feasibility study on constructing or setting up a repository for the open education resources once developed. But the other is $200,000 over the biennium, $100,000 per year to have grants available to faculty members to set up and construct open education resources. And that's what we're asking for you to approve today, is for us to be able to issue that RFA in the early spring. That can then be reviewed, and then we'll try to get those grants out before the end of this fiscal year. The negotiated rulemaking process for the RFA was just concluded, and you'll actually see that rule come to the full board in January. And so we want to, in order to try to make sure that we can spend the money that's been appropriated to us in this fiscal year, we want to try to get these out as soon as we possibly can. We anticipate that the grants themselves will be rather modest in terms of money. We only have $100,000, but we're sort of thinking about $5,000 to $10,000 per grant for a faculty member to develop an open education resources associated with the course that they're teaching. And then, of course, hopefully the idea is that then that can be made available to other instructors and other institutions across the state, and eventually try to reduce the cost of course materials and textbooks to students.
Any questions? Yes.
Can I ask a quick question? So I see here, OER, you define it here as regarding the IP licenses and so on. I was wondering about materials that instructors might use that students have access to, for instance, through their institutional libraries, like say JSTOR or ebooks through their library, which would be free to the student. Would this grant program take those free resources into account, or is that kind of outside of the purview of what would be considered?
I think it's really outside the purview of this, and I understand what you're talking about. And then, of course, you know, what's free to the student is not necessarily free to the institution or free to some other source. But yeah.
Any others? Very good. Let's see, we need a recommendation on that. I need a motion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you, motion passes, thank you. Okay, agenda 5H was lunch, agenda 5I and J were on the consent calendar. Agenda 5K is discussion of the 2017 report on the National Research University Fund. This is for information only. Dr. Peebles.
So this will actually come to the board in January as an action item to request that the board give the commissioner authority to issue the report on the National Research University Fund. What the National Research University Fund does, it provides funds to institutions that qualify for research. It does this on an annual basis. We are required by statute to submit the report as early as we can. The information that makes up that report is usually available to us by December or January. And so we try to get this report out in late February or early March and get it to the controller as soon as possible. You'll see on your screen there that there are criteria attached to this. And so first of all, an institution must be designated as an emerging research institution. As you probably know, there are 8 institutions in Texas that are so designated. They must have restricted research expenditures of at least $45 million in a year. And then they must comply with at least 4 of the following criteria that you see there. So we currently have 2 institutions that are part of the National Research University Fund, or otherwise known as NRUF, and that's University of Houston and Texas Tech University. But in this past fiscal year, the University of Texas at Dallas met the criteria. So if you'll go to the next slide. Then, of course, they have been designated as an emerging research university. They've had their restricted expenditures of over $45 million, and they have complied with the 4 criteria that you see there. They have an endowment of over $400 million. They have a freshman class with high academic achievement and membership in Phi Theta Kappa and high-quality faculty. And so they met the criteria last year. We fully expect that they'll meet the criteria again this year. So when you meet the criteria for 2 consecutive years, then you're eligible to be a part of the NRUF. So back in August, we sent a letter to the controller apprising them that there may very well be a 3rd institution added to the list in this fiscal year. So distributions were made to Texas Tech and University of Houston based on there being 3. So if they meet the criteria and they also then pass, if you will, a state audit, then they can be certified to also be a part of NRUF, and then the University of Texas at Dallas will get a distribution from that fund this fiscal year. If they do not, then the monies that were held back will be reallocated then to both Texas Tech and the University of Houston. But we fully expect that they'll meet the criteria.
Dr. Peebles, do we know what the criteria was that was added to put them on the list?
Well, these are the ones they met last year,
Right.
and these are the ones that we fully expect them to meet again this year.
No, but I mean, do we know which ones that were lacking prior to 3 years prior?
That I would have to go back and check on.
Right. I mean, because, high-quality faculty, freshman class with high academic achievement, I mean, the high-quality faculty, how do we measure that? The achievement of the students, obviously, that's easier.
Yeah, so high-quality faculty is usually measured by things like how many do you have that are a part of something like what is it referred to? And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on this now.
There are a number of things laid out. I don't recall all of them, but National Academy members, for example, I think MacArthur winners, one of them. There are a whole list, and these were agreed upon by the institutions when we set the rules a number of years ago. Because you're right, without some criteria like that, it would be very difficult to identify. Nobel Prize winner is one. That's another one.
But the first two you have to have, and then would you go to that previous slide? Then you.
And then you need four of those six.
Following?
So
Okay.
there's actually 6 there, and you must meet 4 of those 6.
Okay.
And what does it mean to $400 million endowment annually? Does that mean?
You keep that balance.
Yeah.
That's the balance.
Yes.
The average.
Your
So
corpus would
recessions
be
can knock
$400 million.
people out of this, or stock market crashes.
The minimum.
And then so what? How much money is in the fund? Like
There is,
each year?
There is about, let's see, it's in, so it roughly averages between $7.4 and $9.5 million per year has been awarded to University of Houston and Texas Tech University with an average of $8.5 million over the previous 6 years. And so the way the fund itself is set up is, and there is a corpus. The current distribution is based on 3.5% of that corpus. And so we expect that it'll be somewhere in that range of $16, $17 million.
And as one gets added, they split everything
Yes.
equally, so each institution's share goes down. Okay.
Yeah, so instead of being divided 2 ways, it'll now be divided 3 ways.
Other questions? No motion required. Agenda item 5L is consideration of adopting the Academic Course Guide Manual Advisory Committee's recommendation to the committee relating to changes in the ACGM. Dr. Peebles.
So as a result of the Mexican-American Field of Studies work that was conducted last year, then there were the 4 courses that you see listed at the bottom of the page, your first blue page there, were then submitted to what we call our learning outcomes workshops. And so we bring faculty together to look at the course descriptions, to look at the courses and determine what the student learning outcomes for those courses should be. And then those courses go back through the Academic Course Guide Manual Committee. And recall, the Academic Course Guide Manual is the catalog of lower division courses that 2-year institutions in Texas can automatically receive formula funding for. And so ACGM Committee has approved the changes that were made to these courses for inclusion in ACGM, along with the learning outcomes that were identified by the committee.
Do we have questions? A motion? We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, and motion carries. Thank you very much. Agenda items 5M 1 through 8 were on the consent calendar. Agenda item 5N1 is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the proposed amendments to Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.53 through 5.9 and 4.62, and proposed new Section 4.63 of Board Rules concerning the Texas Success Initiative. Members, you have a supplemental piece of material for this, and Jarrell is going to explain it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, the supplemental PowerPoint is just help you for guidance to understand what I'm about to say. It should be brief, but the PowerPoint will be helpful. On the next slide, as many of you know, House Bill 2223 passed during the 85th legislative session. requiring all institutions to develop and implement a co-requisite model for their underprepared students. On the next slide, it talks about how explains what a co-rec model is, where a student can be enrolled concurrently in a CAWS level course as well as a development education intervention or developmental ed course. As you figured, these models are designed to increase student success, time to degree, and actually not increase time to degree, reduce time to degree, and decrease student debt. So the legislation on the next slide requires institutions to increase their percentage of developmental ed students in these co-rec models, 25, 50s, up to 75% by 2021. So when we developed these rules, we held a lot of training sessions prior to developing the rules to be able to get insights from the different institutions. And with all that, we only received 10 comments from various institutions. Most of the comments requested clarity or had general concerns about the legislation, which we don't have any role in that, but we definitely felt we could address those concerns in FAQs or during our trainings that we'll have. We'll have multiple trainings over the next few years. Another set of comments requested changes that added certain courses, like the next slide, talked about CLEP courses and some minor language for clarity. We felt those were reasonable changes, and we made those changes to the rules. We also received some comments that requested changes that fell outside the scope of the legislation. That's for them to actually go and deal with legislators later on, not for us to do that through rule, and a few that weren't really permissible under current statute. So the biggest no is we will continue to provide training and technical assistance for all these institutions, because this is a major shift for development education staff. We'll be doing 3, 4, 5 sessions every year for the next 3 years till we get this done correctly and implemented the way we think it should be. Therefore, we're quite pleased with what we've done for these rules, and we request a favorable adoption.
A lot of work here. Any questions, comments? Need a motion? Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Agenda item 5N2 was on the consent calendar. Agenda item 5N3 is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the proposed amendments to Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Sections 7.3.5.7.8 and 11, and proposed new section 7.15 of Board Rules concerning oversight of certain degree-granting colleges and universities other than Texas public institutions and academic records maintenance, protection, and repository of last resort. Ooh. All right, Dr. Pebbles. Dr. Pebbles.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. So the last legislative session resulted in a significant bill related to, again, what we popularly refer to as the Chapter 7 schools. And much of the impetus for that legislation was a lot of the conversations that we'd had with the board about the regulation of those institutions and so forth. And so I thought what I would do is, through the PowerPoint then, is just provide you with the highlights of the changes that we've made to the rules that reflect the legislation that was passed. So one of the things that passed was the idea of this academic records repository. And you may recall a lot of discussion about what happens to a student's academic records after their institution closes. And, it depends. I mean, we have anecdotal history of academic records being stored in someone's garage, being stored at other institutions. We have an instance now with the ITT records where a bankruptcy judge is storing them in Indiana for us. But I'm happy to report that after some very good litigation from the Attorney General's office, they have agreed to digitize those records and send them to us, which will save us a considerable amount of money in terms of trying to retrieve the records and do something with them. Part of that legislation also gave us not only the authority to establish the repository,
but also some funds to do it with. And so, and 2 FTEs came along with that to have the funds to establish the repository and to maintain it going forward. And so we're transitioning a person that's already on my staff who is currently in a teacher quality grant program that's federally funded that will be going away. And we're beginning to transition her into the position of a program specialist to take this on, and then we'll be hiring someone else when the need arises to do so. So that's a part of it, that we've got the repository now, and it is a repository of last resort. You know, the 2 institutions at University of Phoenix and Alterius that are both still operating, they still maintain the records and so forth. But for those institutions that have closed up, it can be very difficult for a student to either prove to an employer or prove to another institution of higher education that they actually have the credentials and the training or the courses that they have. And we get, we get dozens, if not hundreds, of calls from students wanting to know how to get a hold of their transcripts. This is a very common thing. So the second part is the additional oversight that's been provided to us for the Chapter 7 institutions. And so we can now, and some of this we were doing before through rule, but the statute makes it very clear that institutions now have to report this kind of information to us. It allows us to know when they're in trouble with either their accreditor, so they have to report negative findings, actions, or sanctions by their institutional accreditor. They have to provide a plan to us on how they're going to maintain their accreditation. Now, this may often be the same plan they provide to their accreditor to try to maintain their accreditation, but at least it informs us of where they're at in the process and if they're making any progress toward maintaining their accreditation. And it allows us to list those sanctions on our website so that prospective students can know the standing, just as with the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges. Anyone can go to their website and determine the status of any institution in the southern region. And so it allows us to do that. And then it also places some restrictions on the institutions that is very common if you're on sanction, that allows us to prohibit them from adding new degree programs if they're already under some kind of sanction from their accreditor and so forth. And we can also increase the financial surety, which I'll talk a little bit more about a minute. And then the additional reviews then allows us to conduct a site visit outside of their normal accreditation cycle, for example, if we deem that it's necessary to determine whether they're still a viable entity or not. Okay. And then lastly, and this is a thing I think that the board was probably the most interested in for a long time, is the financial resources. And so it requires institutions that operate under a certificate of authorization to be able to provide a line of credit or a surety bond, or to have the financial resources available to refund students in a current semester. So if an institution suddenly closes and they're required to have the monies available through an independent source that the coordinating board can tap into to then at least refund those students the tuition and fees that they may have lost, which can be substantial amounts of money for at least that term. And then since we can get the records, then we can at least try to hold students whole in some regard. So we think this is, the legislation was both necessary and a welcome to further our ability to provide some oversight of these institutions. And interestingly enough, we did not receive a single comment on the rules.
It really changes our role. I mean, due to just giving you some muscle. Yeah. Any questions, comments?
So I want to ask Chairman Jenkins, I'm pretty sure a lot of this came right out of our discussions.
Well, it's exactly what I was going to say, John.
Something, because we were getting the calls from the students, and it was, so we put threw out ideas. How can we?
Well, and I'll say this, John, and it really was, this was your leadership on this one, because this was an issue that you saw right away and wanted to get some answers to it and really get involved. So kudos to you for really recognizing the need here. And yeah, it is. It came from this right here, this kind of dialogue.
Jacob Monty, I remember he had some input into it too. So, Ms. Jones, this is an example. We talk about a lot of things, but I think we should feel very good about this, because we began these discussions, and lo and behold, here's where it's ended up.
Absolutely.
Good job. So we'll need a motion and a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And just
Good
one
job.
more
Lots of
comment.
work.
I think of the commissioners. He always talks about if you're trying to figure out what to do, put the students first. And this was an example where we were really thinking about those students who were calling us. So.
Very good. Agenda item 5N4 is consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the proposed new Chapter 9, Subchapter N, Sections 9.67 to 9.678 of Board Rules concerning certain baccalaureate degrees, degree programs. So you have supplemental materials for this, and we have two individuals who have registered to testify on this agenda item. Before we hear the public testimony, I'd like to invite Dr. Peebles, Assistant Commissioner for Academic Quality and Workforce, to provide a little background, and then we'll invite our speakers. Dr. Peebles.
Oh, thank you. So in the last legislative session, there was Senate Bill 2118 was passed authorizing community colleges to offer baccalaureate degrees in certain defined areas. Bachelor of Applied Technology, a Bachelor of Applied Science, Early Childhood Education, and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degrees. The bill also directed the coordinating board to apply the same criteria that we always apply to someone seeking a bachelor's degree, but it went further. It also laid out stipulations to look at other criteria as well. One is to focus primarily on local workforce need, whereas with other bachelor's degrees, we often look at local, regional, and statewide need. But in this case, then we're also asked to look specifically at local workforce need as well. The institutions themselves have to have at least $6 billion, for example, in a taxable value in their district, in their taxing district, in order to qualify. They also have to have a positive score, which is defined as a 2 or better on the Financial Composite Index score, which is something that is generated by the coordinating board staff every year. And it looks at a number of factors about their financial viability. If they don't meet that score, then they can make an appeal based on the fact that their score is an anomaly based on something that happened to them either through accounting practices or through a hurricane that may create an emergency. We have a couple of institutions that in the last year or two have gone through a major refinancing of their bonds. And so that can sort of cause an anomaly, if you will, in their composite index score. So we've allowed a provision in there that if you don't meet it, then you can still make the case that you're financially viable nevertheless. But, and there are other things. And then on top of that, if you want a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing, then there are additional criteria that you must meet. And part of this is that it must require Board of Nursing approval. So one of the changes that you'll notice in the rules that you have in front of this is that we've added a line that requires, that tells institutions they'll need Board of Nursing approval. That has been a work in progress. We had a meeting just yesterday with Board of Nursing, and we think that they have arrived at what their approval process will be, and it will be a staff approval. It will not have to go to their full board because they would not normally involve themselves in nursing programs that don't lead to licensure. So one of the provisions that community colleges must meet is that their baccalaureate program, their request, must be built off of a successful Associate of Applied Science degree program. So with the Bachelor of Science in Nursing, that would typically be an associate degree nursing program. And out of those programs, typically one who's going to work in the profession then will go on to take the NCLEX exam and then be licensed as a registered nurse. And so a lot of institutions then will ask for completion programs, or sometimes called transition programs, from associate degree nursing, or sometimes referred to as RN to BSN. And that in itself doesn't entail a separate licensure. So normally the Board of Nursing would not be involved in this, but the legislation specifically states that the Board of Nursing then has to have some role in the approval of particularly things like the curriculum, which, you know, on some level makes a lot of sense. And so they will have a separate, truncated, if you will, approval process. And so we'll need to approve, the Board of Nursing will need to approve for the BSN degrees. Now, we received a number of comments about the legislation itself. One or a couple of the comments had to do with this notion of how do you define what is a successful Associate of Applied Science degree. And when we first drafted the rules, we used Perkins indicators, which are things like completion rates, persistence rates, licensure rates, those kind of things. We had initially put that in as sort of a proxy, if you will, for how do you define a successful program. Perkins indicators can be somewhat problematic for institutions. One in particular that addresses what are called non-traditional populations. And the best way to describe that is, you know, how do you try to get more females to be welders and get more males to be nurses? And so it addresses that disparity that you often see in programs. You saw that this morning when Julie presented the information on the data. And so that is very difficult. And we have at least one major community college in the state of Texas that has never been able to meet that indicator. It's very difficult for institutions to meet some of those indicators. So what we've done is we've substituted Perkins indicators with the requirement that will really put the onus in on the institution to prove they have a successful program through the use of things like completion rates or licensure rates, persistence rates. It gives them a lot more freedom to make the case for themselves about what is a successful program or not. We've also received some comment about one of the sections that talks about articulation agreements. And this is somewhat problematic for us to try to figure out as well, because articulation agreements don't normally address issues of capacity. But that particular piece of legislation was directed at, directly directed us to look at, in a way, to look at what are the capacity of the institutions around you. And this is something that we routinely look at anyway. If someone comes forward with a proposal, and it is an example from, I believe it was last year, where someone came forward with a proposal in the Dallas Metroplex area, and there were 3 institutions there that already offered the program.
Right.
But all 3 of them said, we're at capacity and we have no plans to expand our capacity. And the workforce demand was there for more graduates, and so a 4th program was approved. And so we are, part of our normal routine process is to look at the capacity that exists in the area anyway. And you've seen this in online programs too. And we're struggling with how do you define capacity in online across the state when you can be anywhere to take the program. So that part of it is something that we do routinely, and I think the rule makes that explicit, that we have to do that. And it's talked about in the language of articulation agreements, and there is some consternation about how do we arrive at that. And I think some of the questions we've had about this are quite legitimate in the sense of, well, if an institution says, well, sure, we have the capacity, or, well, we don't have it now, but we will have next year, and how are we going to expand? So then will that allow a four-year institution to just drag this out indefinitely? And you know, we will deal with those issues as they arise, and we'll be asking, we may have to ask an institution to prove up that they don't have the capacity or they do have the capacity, as the case may be. So I will leave it at that, and if you want to hear from our two folks who want to make some comment, then we can come back
So
to
we'll
this.
hear our public testimony, Mr. Mike Midgley from Austin Community College and Dr. Danny Day from Collin College. So we'll remind you, you have 3 minutes. The board is not required or expected to respond to public testimony. And we also have a timer who's going to keep us on track for 3 minutes. So Mr. Midgley, you have the floor.
Great. Good afternoon, committee members, and thank you for this opportunity. For the record, my name is Mike Midgley, and I am Vice President of Instruction for the Austin Community College District, and I am representing ACC. I want to start by thanking the board for all of the hard work that has gone into developing the draft implementation rules for community college baccalaureate programs. As one of the colleges that viewed SB 2118 as an important vehicle for helping our institution meet current and future workforce needs in a region we serve, we are grateful for the coordinating board's attention to this issue, and we largely support the implementation rules as written. We do, however, have a specific concern about the language in the proposed rule related to the coordinating board's determination of whether existing articulation agreements are, and I quote, sufficient to meet the needs of that field, end quote. ACC maintains articulation agreements with several general academic teaching institutions, including the University of Texas at Austin, Texas Tech University Health Science Center, Concordia University, and others. Additional capacity exists within some of these articulations, but it is only in online programs. The only school within a 60-mile radius of our primary teaching site that offers any face-to-face or hybrid options for ADN nurses is the University of Texas at Austin, and they've actually stopped accepting applications directly into their ADN to BSN track. This is problematic for our practicing ADN graduates, since the cost of a university online program can be a significant barrier for many of our graduates, and it is well documented that online learning is not the best learning method for all students. A number of recent studies have confirmed that the majority of the thousands of ADN graduates in our region, and there are thousands, would prefer face-to-face or hybrid options at the community college, citing affordability, location, and familiarity. An ACC completion program would be affordable, at least 50% less than available online programs, would allow students to choose format options that best meet their learning needs, would meet the same high-quality standards as our ADN program, and would focus on ACC graduates and nurses living in the ACC service area, letting us meet the workforce needs of our community. As the committee considers the proposed rules requirement for evaluation of capacity of existing articulations, we would urge that the capacity of articulations with face-to-face or hybrid programs actually located in the community college's region be a primary determinant of capacity rather than online-only programs. I thank you for the opportunity to address you today and for your consideration of this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Day.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting me talk to you today. I'm Dr. Danny Day, Vice President of Academic Services at Collin College, and I'm representing Collin College. First, I want to say thank you to all the staff members for all the hard work that's gone into bringing this very complicated and very specific piece of legislation to rule. I know the coordinating board and the coordinating board staff recognize that we're all working together for the benefit of students and for Texas communities. And to that end, I urge you not to include any non-statutory barriers to the affordable baccalaureate degrees that we want to offer. For example, in Section 9675 of the proposed rules, it directs articulation agreements to include an explanation for why they can't be expanded. And while we understand that it is absolutely necessary to document the need for any new program, we are concerned that articulation agreements are not the place to identify a university's expansion limitations. We believe it's more important to continue to focus on the needs of the communities, the industries, and most of all, the students to document the needs for a new program. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any discussion you'd like to ask Dr. Peebles? This has been very complicated. We've only been talking about it, what, 4 years? Just 4 years. Yes.
Well, I think that Doctors Day and Midgley, traveled a long way to come express their opinions on this. So what do you think of getting a response? Would you like to respond to it? Yeah.
No, I don't. It's up to you. Do you have a question?
Well, I think they're urging us to do certain things, and I'd like to hear what our response to that is. All right.
I'll address Dr. Midgley, who I guess you traveled all the way from Lakeway. Right? Oh, you were already at work. I see. Okay.
Okay, I'll remember that.
You'll have to forgive me. Mike and I go back a long way. We've known each other a long, long time. And I'll address his concern first, I think. And I think it's a point well taken about in looking at capacity and approval of new programs. And while it's not necessarily readily apparent from the rule or even maybe some of our guidelines, when an institution proposes a program in whatever format they might propose it in, and we do take account of whether that particular format is available or not. And so we do try to recognize that there are students for whom online is not a good fit. There are students for whom face-to-face is not a good fit. And so we need some mix of both of those things. And then, and as I think Mike pointed out, a lot of the research would suggest that actually of the three modes of online, face-to-face, or hybrid is actually the best one of the bunch because it can capture the best of both worlds, so to speak. But even then, hybrid may not always be a good fit for some students as well. So we do take into account that notion and look at, so what's being offered around, and if I think last year we actually had a case of where, and I believe it was a nursing program that was in the same location, but it was only offered online. And the institution that proposed the program wanted to offer it face-to-face. And so in that sense, in terms of providing students with as much opportunity to try to meet their needs as best we can, then the board approved that program as well. The second concern, I think, is frankly, a little more difficult to deal with, and the statute itself says that that an institution must have at least 3 articulation agreements have been established with general academic teaching institutions or medical and dental units, or the reasons why no articulation agreements have been established, which is why we have the language in the rule about this. And again, I think it's a point well taken that articulation agreements are certainly not the normal place where you would address capacity, because articulation agreements are generally about one student being able to move from one institution to another institution, and things like admissions requirements, program degree requirements, and that kind of thing. So you don't normally address that through capacity, but the idea behind the legislation itself in this part, and this comes from them discussions with legislative staff that helped create the statute, is that if no articulation agreement is available, then that would be an indicator that there is no capacity at that institution. And if there are articulation agreements available, then that would indicate that capacity is available. And frankly, that's one of those things that we would then actually dig into a little deeper to determine whether that really is a reflection of capacity or not, because capacity is one of those things that we always look at.
Comments? Yes.
Sure. I would say I have the text of the statute open, and the rules language does seem to track pretty closely with it, and that's what we're bound by. And I trust that as you roll it out, if there are changes that need to be made to this, then you can come back and speak to us, but.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know, this is going to be somewhat a learning process for us as well as for the community colleges that make the proposals. So.
Well, this was very controversial with the universities, and we really wanted to work well with both the community colleges and the universities. I think this was the best compromise we came up with, and it protects really everybody, but we want to protect the taxpayer too and still offer access to students. So like I said, this has been discussed really well for 4 years. I think the legislature, thank you to our teams that were working with them when they were putting the bill together and all the input that the staff did. And so I want to say a big thank you, because I know you, Dr. Paredes, Raymond, you were really, this was a passion for you to get this passed. So I think the rules look good. So anybody else? Motion? We'll have to approve this. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No further questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Agenda items 5N, 5 through 9 were on the consent calendar. Agenda item 5O is a consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from the Texas A&M University College Station to establish a university system center in Bryan, Texas. Dr. Peebles.
Thank you. So this is a part of off-campus educational units that are not the main campus. And they generally fall into one of 4 categories. And so you have a main campus, you can have a branch campus, you can have a institution center, or what's usually referred to as a single institution center. And you may recall approving one for Texas A&M University College Station in McAllen last year, actually year before last now, I think. And in this case, this is asking for a university system center. And what this does, this allows all of the constituent parts of a system, in this case the Texas A&M system, to come together in one location and offer different programs. This one would be located at what will be known as RELIS, which is the old Bryan Air Force Base outside of Bryan, in that area. And Texas A&M has long had a presence there with different continuing education units and so forth. And so the land has been solely owned and operated by them for some time. They're building a new building to house this. And if you look on the second page of your blue pages, third page, I'm sorry, toward the bottom, then you'll see that the programs and the institutions within the system that will be offering programs there. And so what this will do is it will allow students in Bryan and surrounding areas that might not be able to make the admissions requirements for Texas A&M College Station a more localized place to go to get a bachelor's degree and to get education. While Blinn College is not formally a part of the system center, it will be located. They will have a site that's under construction, RELIS, and they will be offering all of the lower division courses for these programs. So, and if you think about, it's interesting, you brought up the 50-mile rule earlier, and in some conversations, sort of pointed out that within 50 miles of Texas A&M College Station and within 50 miles of RELIS, there are only 2 institutions within 50 miles, and that one is Texas A&M College Station, and the other is Blinn College. And so it's highly unlikely that either one of them will object to the programs being here, and in fact, they did not. And so part of it is kind of that location and geography piece of it. But I think it's a really interesting experiment, if you will, in bringing a lot of different constituent parts of Texas A&M system together to offer programs to that institution. And for example, just take the first one, the Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences with the concentration on criminal justice that will be offered by Texas A&M International. So when the student attends the Rellis Center and they take that program, they will get a degree from Texas A&M International University. So
I'd like to invite our guest up, who I've already introduced, Dr. James Hallmark and Dr. Jim Nelson, and we might have some further questions. I know I have a question, but so will this be called Rellis A&M or A&M Rellis?
Texas A&M University System Rellis Campus, ma'am.
Rellis Campus, great. Thank you for being here today. What is the maximum or capacity you're looking at for student population? And will it all be in person, or will it be a hybrid, or will it be, can you offer competency-based degrees from this campus, or?
James Hallmark, Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs with the A&M System, and Dr. Nelson knows more of the details than I do, but I'll go first. I think it's real important to understand that we aren't offering degrees from this campus. I want to point to Dr. Peoples' comments, because that is an important distinction for many different reasons. But rather, the degrees are offered from the home campus, such as A&M International in Rex's example. So we won't be offering degrees. But in terms of capacity, Dr. Nelson has worked out some charts and graphs in the programs as they're added over years as to how much we may be able to anticipate at a location like this. And it certainly is dependent upon student demand and market need. Jim, do you want to address that farther?
Yeah, what we anticipate with the programs coming in, the facilities currently under construction, after about 5 years, we can easily handle the approximately 1,300 students from these degree programs that we're looking at. And as the list you're seeing, we've got 8 institutions offering about 11 different degrees. Over time, as things build, as the reputation builds, we feel that 10 to 15 years, probably closer to 15, there could be as many as 10,000 students studying there. The basis for this is, if you just simply look at the Blinn-Bryan population, which is about 14,000 students, of that 14,000, only 1,200 are from the Blinn service area. The other 13,000 are from everywhere else. The question is, why do they want to be there? What are they doing? As Dr. Peoples said, if they are not admitted to the flagship, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? This is a very viable option for them in degree areas that are in high needs, and that's one of the criteria that the steering committee looks at in agreeing to let an institution offer a degree on the Rellis campus.
So does this model exist anywhere else?
To the best of our knowledge, it does not, sir.
I've not seen it, and it's very interesting, and it's just, I'm kind of excited about it, but I just didn't know if there was any other examples that we could reference.
I just wanted to clarify it. He's talking about exactly as configured here. The first system center was actually in Killeen. An A&M System Center was in Killeen. It's now a university. But this was a model developed many years ago to do exactly what they're doing here. But I believe this will be the only system center currently in play at this moment, but we have had previous system centers. So it's, the model's at least probably 14, 15 years old in terms of the concept of the system center, and it's been in our rules for many years.
I might clarify on that as well, that this is in many ways a MITSE, and it's multi-institutional teaching center, and there are certainly MITSEs around the state. And as Dr. Gardner has mentioned, the University Center has been used before. University System Center has been used before. We do think we're doing some unique things associated with this, but it is within the rules and the context of what the coordinating board has been doing before. But one of the things that we are most proud of is the level of integration of what we're doing with Blinn and with our universities. And I think the integration of that curriculum and programming and the seamlessness of that entire process is a uniqueness that will bear some fruit as we move forward with other models.
So that's what I'm still trying to understand is the Blinn component to this. I understand the relationship with Blinn and A&M and the program where you're able to blend team and all that. So I'm just looking at the paperwork and it talks about denied 4,626 students admission, but a big percentage of those I would have thought might have gone through the Blinn program. So I mean, how does that affect them?
If I may be misunderstanding, and please interrupt me if I'm going the wrong direction, but the Blinn team, which is something you've heard quite a bit about, those are admitted to A&M. So those really aren't part of what we're talking about here.
Okay.
And so those students, assuming they do everything they're supposed to do as part of the Blinn team, and for that matter, the engineering academies as well, these are A&M admitted students that we're talking about.
So they're not part of the 4626 that are denied admission?
That's correct. This group that we're talking about are those who have been denied admission at A&M. They are at Blinn. A significant portion of them are actually automatic admits at our other regional institutions because they're top 25%, and that's part of the state law. And so these are good students. And many of them, actually, the reason they come to College Station is because they want to be there and because they hope to get into A&M. But a large number of them are not, and we believe this will provide a viable means for a quality degree for those who are not able to get into A&M.
So there's no, I guess I'm still, that's a great answer and it helps me, but I'm still wondering, you know, we were talking about Blinn and what is the effect on Blinn? I mean, is it a partnership with Blinn, or I'm just not really getting where these students that might have been going there now, they're really not because they're going to go to the Rellis campus, and what's that relationship?
Blinn is building a building on Rellis right now that will be open within the next few months. And,
fall of 18.
Yeah, and Blinn is offering their programs out there. They basically are moving a significant portion of their operation to the Rellis facility. And therefore Blinn is there and they are doing the first 2 years, but we are doing significant pathway work and integration of advising and all sorts of things like that, so that for that Blinn student, it is a seamless process as they go from the Blinn experience into our programs.
Into the Rellis experience?
Into the Rellis experience.
Okay, so it's still a pathway, and Blinn is still a way to get through the A&M system, but at the Rellis facility.
And at the Rellis facility, it's the only way to get through that. With the way the partnerships have been set up, is that Blinn College is going to be doing all of the lower division coursework.
Got it. Okay. That's what I wasn't clear on. I'm sorry.
And then they will apply to these other schools, right? And like if I want to do health sciences from West Texas A&M, at my second year at Blinn, I would apply to West Texas A&M for that program at Rellis.
Yes, ma'am, and we're working the process through that is virtually seamless.
Right. Okay.
Almost a paperwork issue at that point.
So in the long run, the A&M system could increase their graduation rates by, or just numbers, not necessarily rates, by just having more access, right?
Yes. And that's part of the goal of what's being done, is provide the students the access they may not otherwise have. And then what you said is also important, is that in establishing the degree, or offering the degree programs in the Rellis campus, it is that we're opening up to a new population of students. We're not taking students who would otherwise be studying in Kingsville and have them now studying at Rellis.
I actually know how this could work. A lot of young men have girlfriends at A&M because they got in and they didn't. And I understand this whole situation.
Surely it goes the other way also?
Not too much. There are more girls. There are more girls at A&M.
That's correct. They sure are.
I'd like to make a motion for
Okay,
approval.
so we have a motion. Oh, yes. Okay.
Let me second and then.
Okay, so we have a second now.
My question is, how are you going to handle the faculty issue? Now, when you have these degrees are being offered by all these different campuses. Are you going to be moving faculty in and out? Are you going to have faculty housing on the campus to accommodate them? How's it going to work?
Multiple ways in which it's going to work. The intention, going back to one of the original questions, the view of the programs there, they are predominantly face-to-face programs. It is not a site for distance ed. The expectation is that the institutions offering degree programs will be hiring faculty that will be in residence at RELIS. That will be their assigned location. In a couple other cases, one of which is A&M Corpus Christi right now with its BBA program, has 3 of its existing faculty that have chosen to relocate to RELIS, which is an excellent advantage because we've now got mature faculty that are going to be there. There's also the possibility, because of the extensive research that is going on the RELIS campus and the different things, that faculty from the regionals offering degree programs could come and spend a semester or a year at RELIS, be participating in research programs while supporting the teaching. In the master plan for the RELIS campus, there is some housing that is sitting in the master plan. It is not within the capital plan at this point. But the American Free Enterprise System is alive and well within the area, and there is some private development that is already going up literally across the highway from the RELIS campus.
But if you're going to hire faculty who will teach exclusively at RELIS, then how can you say that that's a degree from Kingsville or West Texas A&M? Because degrees that are specific to a particular department or particular campus are based on the involvement of the faculty in a particular discipline with each other. If you have a dedicated faculty at RELIS from, let's say, Corpus Christi, but they actually don't have much interaction with the faculty on the campus in Corpus Christi, how can you claim that that's a degree from the institution?
It's the interaction. You hit the nail right on the head there. I can only speak, to that from personal experience. When I started an off-campus graduate program down in Charleston, in one of my past lives, I was literally down there alone, but I was part of the civil engineering faculty. I was expected to interact with that faculty. There was constant communication. The department chair and I were in touch all the time. I had to serve on departmental committees. And it was actually through that same period of time that I went through tenure and was promoted. So it's that key. In my most recent past life, when we looked at, it's been mentioned, some of the engineering programs down in Houston, one of the expectations of the departments and of the faculty is that those faculty participate via WebEx or GoToMeeting in all of the faculty meetings. They're engaged in all of the curricular decisions that are going on. And as dean at that time, I'd furthered the expectation the faculty would, or the dean or the department chair, they would travel down and look at those programs. So that's engagements there, and that's one of the things that we've stressed in talking with the institutions that is absolutely essential to make it work.
So these majors and these programs will replicate the same courses that are being offered in that major at the sponsoring campus.
Yes, sir. It'll be the same curriculum, same graduation requirements. The students must apply to the institution, be accepted by the institution, and they must satisfy all degree requirements of that institution for that major. Okay, one very quick question. Is it a good idea to have 2 degrees in essentially the same field from 2 different campuses? Is that a unnecessary duplication? Let me address 2 pieces on that, if I could. One of the tenants coming in and as part of the decision tree is that there's non-duplication, and that is looked at very clearly. So we're not going to have 2 BBA degrees offered at that campus. I think the one you're particularly looking at is criminal justice. The 3 institutions requested to offer the degree. We'd formed a task committee off the steering committee to really address that and look at, are these degrees the same, or do the degrees offer significantly different focus areas or opportunities for the students? In the case of those 3 degrees, it was determined the latter. They are different. The criminal justice degree from Tarleton State is the traditional criminal justice degree. The criminalistics degree, or the bachelor's in criminology with the criminalistics, is more of the CSI. It's getting into the sciences side of the house, which is, yes, it's a criminal justice degree, but it's different than what's going there, and it's really more into the science side, and that does collaborate then with the biology degree that A&M Texarkana is offering. The BAAS from Texas A&M International is looking at a different group of students, different experiences coming in, where some of the other pieces can be taken into account that would not necessarily fit into the existing degree programs the way they're offered. So it's the outcome is still going to be a degree in criminal justice, but the focus of those degrees is different. The type of student that can be coming into it is different.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
One quick clarification. I don't believe I heard you mention this in response to Raymond's question, but my assumption is that, as with other system centers in the past, is if that local faculty you hire, say, for the program at Kingsville, will actually be hired by that department at Kingsville. So that's another way they're connected. They're actually being vetted through that institution and their program, and that's an important point,
I think that's important, just amplifying what Dr. Hallmark said too, that, you know, RELIS is not issuing a degree, it is not admitting students. Likewise, RELIS is not hiring any faculty.
Now, are you giving these campuses extra FTE to offer the courses at RELIS, or are they going to have to take that out of their general allocation?
No, sir. They, yes and no. No, in that the system has agreed as enrollments grow, and this has been part of our financial model we've been working on, that as enrollments grow, we recognize that the revenue coming in after everybody takes the appropriate share to cover expenses is not necessarily going to cover the faculty costs. The system has agreed that for the first 3 years in which the program is offered, the system will cover the deficit faculty costs for that institution. So by offering the programs at RELIS, it should not have a negative financial impact on the institution and can have a positive financial impact.
Well, I can tell from James' expression he knows what I'm getting at. Well, you'll have 3 years of peace and quiet, and then.
And if it's not successful at the end of those 3 years, we'll have some squawking. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. But you know, by the modeling, we don't know what will happen. You know, but certainly by what our projections are, the reason that 3-year window was identified was that we believe that within 3 years we will be operational, such that the campuses should be looking at these programs at the end of 3 years. Are these viable programs or not? If not, they need to discontinue it. But we believe they will be viable.
Supporting that with the financial model, one of the programs looked like it was not going to be making money at all after several years, and the decision was made that that program would not be offered at RELIS. It did not make good economic sense.
Right. And I might mention that all of the comments about the faculty integration has also been discussed regarding the student integration. We want these students to graduate as javelinas, as buffaloes, as lions, not as, I don't know what I am, but I'm in RELIS. And that's going to be a real challenge, but the student affairs folks are on that challenge.
Okay. Annie.
I just briefly wanted to say I can think of one instance, I guess, in the last 10 years where an agreement between a 2-year and a 4-year institution to share physical location had kind of a messy unwinding and kind of a difficult divorce. And I just want to be sure that Blinn College and the A&M system there's a similar set of expectations, and that there's, you know, agreements in place, especially what would happen to students if this relationship fell apart. If this is interesting and very complicated, that's why I ask.
Right. I guess the only thing I could say on that is that Blinn College has been a wonderful partner. They really have. And I know I would say that even if they hadn't been, but they have been so enthusiastic about just, you know, wanting to be engaged in this and participating in this since the first time that Billy Hamilton and I drove over to Mary Hensley's office and said, what do you think about this? And they have just been so integrated with Dr. Nelson's team. It's not a A&M system and a Blinn operation. All of the planning, everything that's going on has been together. Now, can I tell you that that'll be true in 5 years? No, I can't. But to your point, we've got to continue to nurture that relationship and make sure that everybody's winning on all sides.
And you have an MOU, I'm sorry, or a contract with them of any type?
We have an MOU or an MOA or whatever it is in terms of some workforce development stuff. I don't think we do on the academic.
We've got leases in place for the ground leases for their academic building they're putting in. You know, those are all in place. I think further to what Dr. Hallmark said, this relationship with Blinn is not a new relationship. It's been going on since probably sometime in the 70s. I know for certain the relationship between Texas A&M University and Blinn College has been going on, from the early 80s. So this has been a long-term relationship. In the integration, even in the steering committee, Blinn has 3 or 4 seats sitting on that steering committee from different areas. Marketing the programs, because we want it to appear really seamless for the student. You start here, you finish here. That marketing has got to be coherent. Blinn has been actively engaged with the system institutions in preparing the promotional materials, in the joint websites, all of those pieces that, although Blinn College definitely is not a part of the Texas A&M system, but in looking at how this thing is operating, unless you knew that, you wouldn't know that. The program marketing materials themselves are going out, co-branded between Blinn and the A&M institution that is offering that particular degree.
They're making money off this.
Question. And just one quick point about Blinn's involvement, and you asked a question about, sort of what's in it for them, so to speak. I think they would view it very positive, because I think it's important to note that Blinn College actually had broken ground on a site to build another campus. And when this opportunity came along, they halted that and moved to the Rellis site. So I think that at least is a clear indication of at least their sense that this can work and be a very positive thing.
Yeah,
for them
I
as
completely agree. I mean, the relationship is rock solid. The Blinn A&M relationship is not. I think that now that I understand it, it actually makes really good sense to me. I think what's going to be interesting, though, and one of you said it, these kids, they're not thinking they're a Javelina.
Right.
Okay? I mean, they're thinking they're an Aggie at the main campus over here. And maybe that's fine, but I just know that that's what's going to be the magnet and the draw, because they want to be close to Kyle Field, right? I mean,
right.
That's the ultimate draw for a lot of them.
Right. And that is unquestionably something we have been discussing from the beginning, is how do we deal with that in a positive way so that the students leave not just with a degree, but also happy to have spent their time there.
Yeah.
The mascot should be a transformer.
Yeah.
Mascot you want.
We'll take that recommendation back to the steering committee, sir.
Just I want credit for it.
Okay.
We have another question.
My question is, with the student enrollment going up and all the work you're doing there, what are you doing about housing?
Again, there's student housing that is in the master plan for the Rellis campus. That housing is not being built at this point, but there is sufficient housing currently available within the region, and then out by Rellis itself, private developments are beginning to build in anticipation of what is happening. So, for the enrollment growth, the housing issue is not expected to be a problem at all. In fact, I would suspect housing is going to stay.
You mentioned finance a little bit. So I think for the first time in a long time, A&M has been able to do what UT has done, as giving back, the athletic department giving back to academics. So with your new coach's big contract, I guess y'all aren't going to have any problems getting money from for your academic programs.
How would you answer that one, sir?
Different colors of money. So the coach is paid with a different color of money. So yeah, actually this isn't touching A&M's money at all. It's a system initiative, and we've worked through the finances, and we are continuing to work through the finance. The actual startup costs in terms of the buildings and whatnot, PUF, AUF kind of funding. Longer term, it's got to generate the revenue through the general process of appropriated funds, and the words have escaped me at the moment, but generated through the SCH and whatnot, it has to pay the bills in that.
Right. Well, that's my point. Obviously, it's an A&M system driven and not Texas A&M University and College Station.
Right. Although they are very good partners.
Of course.
I'm serious. Really.
Of course, that's something else you have to say, right?
True.
But the fact of the matter is my point being is don't forget about the other system schools, obviously, that are affected by all this as well. As you all know, we're taking a good view of that, so the state appreciates that.
Do we have a motion? Do you have a motion and a second?
I made the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. The next agenda item is adjournment. Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, team.
Well done. Well done.